Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have three hearings tonight. That one will be 7:15, one 7:30, and one 7:45. So we may have to break from our other business to accommodate those. First of all, we have Aaron from Traybell Energy. Would you like to? Aaron?
Good evening, everyone. Erin Schmerschneider with Traybell Energy. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm here this evening to talk about both the electric and natural gas aggregation programs for the township. I presented a handout. There's two packets here. We could start with the first one that has a little bit more color on the top of it. So if you open up to the first page here, wanted to talk a little bit about the participation success thus far. So for this current program, which goes back to May of 2023, total savings for the community of $589,000, 454. So that covers 1,000 participants, just over 1,000 participants. So that would give a savings of $587 per participant, which is really fantastic. I think participation rate is really fantastic. I think overall that's very, very good news for the performance of the program. Flip to the next page, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we see things going in the future. I think, as everyone is well aware, costs of most things, if not all things, are going up. We anticipate to see both electric and natural gas prices rising as we go into the future. This graph here, it represents what we think the total load growth, meaning the electric growth within the utility footprint, which is AEP Ohio. Our grid operator puts out a report at the beginning of every year to say, okay, here's how much load we saw last year come into the grid. Here's how much we anticipate seeing next year come into the grid. So that green line there that shoots way, way up, that's what is anticipated going out into the next several years. That is the likes of Intel coming in. That is the likes of Google, Amazon, Meta, building these giant data warehouses. And we see that just especially in this part of the country, just really exploding over the next 5 years. What that also means is that prices are anticipated to go up. We are at a supply-demand mismatch right now, meaning we don't have enough power generation to keep up with this anticipated additional load that is going to go into the grid. A lot of that is due to retirements of fossil fuel power plants from the prior administration. Whatever your policies might be environmental wise, coal and natural gas power plants can make power all hours of every single day. And if they need to make more power, the grid operator can say, hey, please make us more power. And they can, elevate that production. Those retirements have been replaced mostly with renewables. You can't always make it sunnier. You can't always make it windier if you need those to generate more power. So again, just with that supply demand mismatch, we see for the next 3 to 5 years, commodity power prices are going to go up. You flip to the next slide, it's called PJM capacity. So capacity is the second largest component in your electric supply price. And that capacity word is just a fancy word that says, I apologize, there's a little bit of an echo. Capacity is a cost that exists to incentivize power producers to make enough power to support what's needed so we don't have rolling brownouts and blackouts. So what we just talked about before, we see the commodity going up, the actual energy itself. And then secondary, we see the capacity going up as well because of that same supply demand mismatch. That capacity price is calculated through an auction process that happens every year. The important thing to note here, you don't really need to pay attention to these numbers, but was that last year, the capacity rate was 28.92. The last time around, it was 277. So that auction cleared 9 times higher. Really, the takeaway there again is just there's not enough generation to meet the amount of load that we're expecting to have come onto the grid. The next couple of slides really are just a visual representation to show you exactly what I'm saying. Capacity is going to increase. The actual energy is going to increase as well. Here to the slide 7 says what's next for electric anyways. We see electricity rates are anticipated to increase 20% come June 1st. That does not matter if you're with the aggregation program, if you're with the utility, if you have selected your own program, those rates are going up. We know the AEP Ohio price to compare is going to be 10.4 cents come June 1. Currently it's 7.87 cents. So we see that it's coming and it's coming soon. What we can do to help offset that is secure as low of a commodity price as possible. We are suggesting to bring the program out 3 years to lock that commodity price now as a cost avoidance strategy before those increases come over the next 3 to 5 years. We know what capacity is going to be for that first year, so we'll fix everything for that first year of the agreement. And then in years 2 and 3, as that capacity value becomes known, we'll add that in at cost, no markup. There's a public calculation so you can know exactly what that's going to be when it's announced. But we don't want to wait around to secure the commodity price in a rising market. We want to get ahead of that and make sure we have a long-term energy view ahead of those costs increasing. We still expect to see savings. Just instead of this, $500 mark, we're looking at $100 to $150 annually, which is still nothing to sneeze at. It's still savings over the utility. It's just not quite the windfall that we've seen because that delta is narrowing and costs are going up. What we are recommending, as I said, is that 3-year term. We work with 8 total townships within Delaware County. Understanding that the prosecutor has certain opinions about allowing us to act as the agent on your behalf. We have put together language that they are comfortable with that sets a not to exceed price within a supply agreement. So we're not acting as your agent, but you would be entering into directly a supply contract, which allows us to watch the market between now and June 1st. When we see a price that's favorable, that's under that not to exceed price, we would execute it. We would let you know what that price is. Natural gas is much simpler. So I will stop here. If there's any questions on the electric program, that was a lot to cover. It's very technical. I'm happy to get as much into the weeds or answer any clarifying questions that there might be.
Questions?
How are residents made aware beyond this meeting of this process that's unfolding, of both their savings in the past and of the rise in costs in the future?
Sure. So savings in the past, it's this meeting. It's if you would like to post things onto your website, I'm happy to put together either this presentation or more condensed packet to be able to post. If you have newsletter that's going out, we've done that for other communities too, where we do a little write-up. You tell us how much real estate, if it's a half a page, whatever, we could do that. But that's really the way that residents are made aware of the savings. Same if you have social media, we could put together something to post on there. In terms of the rising costs, there has been media around that just recently. Unfortunately, the utility doesn't announce this until very close to when it takes effect. So it's, me having these conversations. There is some media that's come out over the past month. There's a couple of consumer council groups that are going out and setting up meetings to talk about that as well. But unfortunately, there is just not the public attention until very close to when it happens. So I'm also happy to answer any resident phone calls ever that you guys get. Send them my way, my cell directly to our back office to Emily. Happy to answer any of that, but unfortunately, that information isn't as widespread as it should be.
What you're proposing, has that been prepared and maybe sent to the prosecutor's office yet?
So it has been approved. I'm not sure who your prosecutor is exactly. I know Chris Betts, Corey Go has also approved that for different communities.
Right.
Yep. So most recently Brown Township, he just approved that. Mhm.
And what window are you recommending to go out to? How many years?
Yeah, so we're recommending to go out through 2028. So right now your program is up for renewal in May. We're recommending to go out 3 years. And again, that's, in line with what other communities have done, understanding your own township. You don't have to follow suit what everyone else has done. I'm just giving it as a reference point. We also have Concord that went out 5 years. So they had the desire to go out a little bit further.
Okay. So we need to act before May meeting.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything prepared?
I do have it with me. I could also coordinate directly with your administrator if you would like, or if you'd like me to reach out to the prosecuting attorney directly, I can do that. Just let me know what's your preference.
Well, we've got a lot of stuff going on tonight. Like to discuss this with the board later on in the meeting, maybe.
Sure.
So,
And what we've done for other communities is, approve pending legal approval, right?
okay.
So if legal has a problem with it, then obviously nothing would be done. If your legal approves, then, the board has already pre-approved, given that blessing from your prosecutor.
Gentlemen,
Could I just ask one question about the future?
Of course.
New administration, new Secretary of Energy, perhaps a greater emphasis on fossil fuels versus renewables. Also wondering about nuclear energy and if these power generators are looking at these as possibilities in the next decade or so
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
impacting Central Ohio.
Yep. Yes, so dead on with the new administration and much more support for domestic fossil fuel production. I think you're going to see more power plants be generated that are natural gas fired. Coal, probably not as much. And nuclear, yes, with the caveat, there's still a big hangover of return of safety with nuclear. I think it is, if you're concerned about carbon output and you're concerned about reliable, inexpensive power, that's the only thing that marries those two in that way. So I think you'll see that. That'll probably lag, I would say, 5 years into actually seeing that develop. I think natural gas power plants will be built. Even if they're approved today, it's 18 months to 3 years for them to be ready to produce power. But I do think you're going to see that, especially like you said, over the next 10 years. I think you'll also see with some of these large users of power that they're going to have to provide their own power generation, right? So if you want to get approval to build a big data center here, okay, the utility doesn't have enough right now. So you're going to have to bring your own, small modular reactor for nuclear or your own mini, gas turbine, whatever the case might be, I think. But where we are right now, a lot of this has already been approved to come into this utility footprint. So we are where we are with that.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
public have any questions? Yes.
I couldn't hear well. That rate you're going to propose a fixed rate?
Yes, sir.
For 3 years.
So it would be the underlying commodity price itself, the actual energy itself, that'll be fixed for 3 years. For the first year, we know capacity, so that will fix everything for year 1. When capacity comes out for year 2, we just add it on top. Year 3, we add it on top of that underlying commodity price. Capacity is one of those things that we can't do anything to change the cost. We can't advise when to buy it, how to buy it. When that auction happens and it's announced, that price is what that price is. Sure.
Anything else? Yes.
Question, you talked about centers that were gonna be coming in, and then you're counting those in with that commodity pricing. Is it possible, has it ever been done where those big companies that come in, that they subsidize some of that for the community?
Yeah, and that's a big concern, right? That is being presented, that legislation is being presented, it's being discussed, but as I'm sure you can imagine, that's going to be a big argument because they don't want to have to carry that cost. So that is certainly something, especially consumer groups have said, well, it's not fair. Why is the resident having to pay to offset this big amount of load growth coming in for this giant business? So those discussions are happening, but there's going to be a lot of fighting on both sides. I wouldn't expect that to be resolved for, maybe a couple of years, I think would be yeah, optimistic, yeah.
Anything else? Gentlemen, what do you think? You're new to this.
Well, to your point, you want to discuss a little bit later on, and then we gotta
Yes,
figure out where to
that's
put it
fine.
in an agenda.
Yeah.
We're on top of a hearing.
Yeah, we need to continue with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I can give you the documents right now. Yep. Sure, of course.
Later and we can kind of do that.
Yep, absolutely.
And if I know you gave me your card and I probably have it in my desk at home, Aaron, but I wanted to put you in touch with our comms person
Yeah,
so that we can get some of this information into our social media or our mailers that go out.
Yep.
So if you could just pop me an email address or something, that'd be great.
absolutely can do that.
Thank you.
Certainly. Yes, thank you very much for your time and I'll be around over here if anyone else has questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you.
I can start on email with Herman and Lindsay too.
That'd be great.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll recess the business part for the hearing. This hearing has been called by Jack Clark. His mailing address is 2830 South State Route 605, Galena, Ohio. This is to rezone from AR1 to FR1, 5.228 acres. The hearing, regional planning met the 27th, gave their recommendations. And there was no conditional use items applied. The typical on-site sanitary was made aware of to the applicants. The hearing by the trustees was advertised April 1st by the township website, calendar, the Facebook pages, the community sign in the back door, and the display case for where we display our legal documents. This was a change from prior notices. The House Bill 315 took effect by ORC that allows townships to use their own website for notification and not the newspaper general circulation, because there's hardly a newspaper that circulates now. So I checked with Corey Go, and we were on solid footing doing this, and I have a resolution later on in the evening to put that in effect. The zoning commission held their hearing March 3rd, and there was no problems with the application. Like I said, regional planning, they didn't put any conditional uses on it. Is there any, Mike, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay.
Right.
Any of the public have any comments on this request, this zoning hearing? Any discussion, gentlemen?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Jackson.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, motion carried. This hearing request has been approved. The decision will be effective in 30 days after right of referendum. So, thank you. We'll reconvene our business meeting for a few minutes. We'll introduce Brian.
Sure. This evening, I have asked Brian Clark, who is the Deputy Director of Strategic Growth Development for the City of Columbus, to engage the residents of the township and the trustees regarding conversations that we've been having with the city of Columbus. And I've also asked Joe Simonello to give a presentation about the first potential sewer run in the township. So a couple of comments in regard to this. We've been driven by a couple of strategic priorities. One, to seek for the autonomy of the township. That is to retain our geographical integrity and our cultural identity. And then secondly, to enter into strategic partnerships. And both of the conversations that we're having tonight are the result of work that's being done to establish those two strategic priorities. And these are around the importance and the vital tool of public and private partnerships as we move forward for the future of the township. The township, hopefully, having retained its autonomy, now has upon its shoulders the great responsibility of working toward development that is congruent with our strategic vision, with our zoning, our other priorities as they're fleshed out. And that responsibility lies on our shoulders. As part of that, we recognize that we don't have all of the expertise, what I call subject matter experts, within the township, that we have to rely upon external voices to help us and to bring perspectives and viewpoints to this process. What we're committed to as trustees is absolute transparency in this process. As each of us engages various municipalities, or we talk to developers, et cetera, there's a point in those conversations when it's important that all three of us have an awareness of the content of those conversations and of the ability, as we move toward decision points, to speak into those conversations. And so tonight's invitations are the result of conversations that have been had, that have been formal, but have not reached decision points, and of the need to make our residents aware that this conversation is occurring, and so that we as trustees can, with transparency and not violating sunshine laws, engage as a team in this process. It is an opportunity for us as trustees to be held accountable. And so tonight, in particular, I'm being held accountable by my peers in regard to conversations upon which I have been engaged. They are given the opportunity tonight to scrutinize the content of these conversations and the trajectory upon which they are. And you, as residents, are also given that opportunity. It's absolutely vital that we adhere to the principle that open communication builds trusting relationships, and that we work through that process, no matter how tedious or sometimes painful it is, so that we can have a collaborative spirit and helpful conversation. Tonight, these conversations are not fait accompli. They do not represent a deal that's already been crafted or concepts that have already been agreed to. These are ideas in the process of being made, of being deliberated. And our attitude is, bring your best idea. Bring your scrutiny to the conversation. Sharpen us by your insight, by your discernment, so that the very best ideas are made by this board, no matter who is sitting here, as we go forward. That we are not biased, nor do we show favoritism in this process. And so what's happening tonight is very important because of those priorities and the need to build these strategic partnerships. And so Brian's here tonight. We've had the opportunity to sit down 3 times with members of his team in the city of Columbus. The first couple of meetings to kind of explore, hey, what are your strategic priorities? What are our strategic priorities? And then this last time to sit down in Delaware with leadership in Delaware County and talk about if we were to craft an agreement, what would be the elements of that agreement? And I thought that we had reached a point where it was very important for him to give his perspective on that conversation and allow us to grill him a little bit. And so, Brian, thanks for coming tonight.
I appreciate it, Trustee Trainer, and appreciate the trustees having me this evening. Have a couple of prepared comments, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And then I'm happy to dig into a conversation about what we've been going through in our conversations and where Columbus would like to see things headed. So I do want to begin by commending the community members and leadership in the community for the thoughtful approach that you're taking to development in the township. This is a time of explosive growth in Central Ohio. And the fact that you're having open, transparent communication, you're bringing different partners to the table, I think is absolutely the right direction to go. So I want to begin by commending you for that. Sometimes what we aren't planning to do, I think can be just as important as what we are planning to do. And I want to go through a couple of things that are important to Columbus as we have these conversations. First, and probably foremost, we aren't planning any annexation into Harlem Township. Period. Full stop. The only conversations we've had about any annexation into Delaware County at this stage is into Genoa Township for property that the city owns around Hoover Reservoir. And that's it. So city-owned parcels, no residents. We're also in conversations. And actually, when we met with the Genoa Township trustees, we began by offering an annexation agreement that would memorialize just that. Columbus would have the ability to annex our property and nothing else. So it's not an opportunity for additional development. It's not an opportunity for additional utilities. We are not planning to extend any utilities beyond the county line. So I think everyone is aware of the trunk sewer that Joe will talk a little bit more about later. It'll come up to the county line and that's it. And while we do have an agreement with the Delaware County commissioners that covers about 2/3 of the township, it's an overlap coverage. And we really don't see Columbus as a driver for any of the infrastructure that would go along with that. I mean, I think that's really critical because the infrastructure you bring in, where you bring it in, is going to determine your growth patterns and not just for the next couple of years, for the next generation. So that thoughtful conversation, I think, is really important. We are not planning to look for Columbus-style development. I think one thing that folks are sometimes concerned about when Columbus is in the room is what we are expecting in terms of the partnership. And really what we're looking for is an opportunity to craft an annexation agreement and an economic development agreement between Columbus and Harlem Township. And I think a couple of things that are really important. First of all, that it protects the autonomy of Harlem Township. That has to be a priority for both of us. Second, drive responsible growth and responsible in the way that you define it. This is your community. We want to be partners in that. And supports your identity and pride as a rural community. I think that all of those things are things that can be achieved and can be achieved in a strategic partnership. So why is Columbus coming to the table? We are interested in partnering with you on economic development opportunities as you identify them. So again, not Columbus driving what economic development would happen in Harlem, but as it happens, we want to partner with you. I want to say, I'm telling my wife on the way here, we're kind of at the beginning of the relationship here. We've gone a couple of dates. We're meeting the parents tonight. We're We're gonna get a little bit of feedback from a few cousins probably. And that's okay. That's what it's here for. If this works out, we think it'd be great for both of us. If it's not the right fit, we're also going to look for opportunities to support you in, no annexation, and that can be just it. So with that, that's kind of why we're at the table, what we're discussing, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you've got about Columbus's intentions and hopes in this partnership.
So I'll make a couple of points. One, the ball's in our court. You've indicated to us that we need to develop our economic plan so that we have a real understanding of where we are with our zoning and overlays and expected growth in both commercial, industrial, and residential areas. And that's something that Dana McDaniel will begin in May of this year with Montrose. And my hope is that end of summer, that we've got something concrete that we can come back to you and say, if we form a JET agreement, here are the things that we're really looking for. And then secondly, could you articulate a little bit when you talk about an option to annex and looking at the northeast corner or the southeast corner of the township?
Yep.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so something that now we're not looking for a water sewer agreement here, but something that is typical in the agreements that we strike for water and sewer, for annexation, for economic development, is a growth area. So it would be typical, for example, with our agreement with New Albany, we've identified areas up to the Delaware County line where Columbus is likely to grow and where New Albany is likely to grow. And we agree together that those are exclusive expansion areas. So essentially, Columbus is not going to consider any annexation there, and they're not going to consider any annexation in our area. Columbus has typically maintained corridors to important economic development areas. Some areas, like we call it the Finger, that's in northwest Franklin County, leads up towards Dublin. There was a thought ages ago that we would be developing into Madison County, and that didn't come to fruition. But we are now, for the first time, seeing significant interest in residential growth there. We have a comp plan that was developed with the community. I think it was entered into in 2006, still valid today, and that's what's guiding the discussions there. What we would propose is a small corridor that would allow Columbus to annex to Licking County if we chose to do that. We have no interest in determining the use of that property. If it's green space, if it's parks, if it's residential, whatever the township feels would be appropriate. And our simple ask would be, at some point in the future, should Columbus want or need to expand into Licking County, that would be the growth corridor for it. And the annexation agreement would clearly articulate the parcels that could be affected, and would also clearly articulate that that's the extent of an expansion area for Columbus.
I'm sure there's going to be further discussion on that. We have 7:30 hearing. I wonder if Mr. Clark would entertain us to handle the hearing quickly and then get back to that conversation.
Happy to.
Okay.
Fine, thank you. Recess the business portion to conduct this hearing. This is the hearing. Yeah, I'm ready for this one. Hearing 2502. Yes, Holly, I'm gonna need you for this. This purpose of this hearing was initiated by Harlem Township to amend figure 35.3 to reflect the expanded boundaries as shown on the map. That's not gonna be available to.
Holly's got it up.
Oh, thank you. So could you tell the public a little better what we're trying to accomplish here?
Sure. So what you're seeing up here on the screen is the County Line Road overlay zoning that was put in place, the green, purplish blue, and then the salmon color that was put in place last year. and it has been in effect. The Planning and Zoning Commission and staff at the township proposed to expand the subarea C along Trenton Road to the west. That will bring it to the edge of the mixed use overlay that we just adopted recently on the south side of Trenton Road, and will actually end up completing the full boundary, the north boundary, east boundary, and southern boundary as far as protections with overlay districts. So that's the purpose of this expansion of CLR subarea C. I show the expansion parcels in yellow just to differentiate them from the already approved overlay. But when it goes into effect after approval, it will actually be that salmon color and will have the same uses and development standards of subarea C that's already adopted.
And I'm looking at the minutes from the zoning commission. There was no major discussion of anything about this request. And I don't think regional planning, let's see, they have recommended approval. There was no conditional use added to that. Any questions what Holly stated?
Okay, so the yellow, you are advocating to be the salmon color, which is light industrial. What is that?
Yes, it's a light industrial type zoning.
Okay, so we'd be expanding the light industrial
Correct.
across the top
Correct.
perimeter. And what are those roads right in there?
So Trenton Road is running east and west, the township border. The north border is basically Trenton Road. And then you'll see the diagonal road running kind of from the top there down to the bottom right at the northeast corner of the township. That's State Route 37. Delaware County has identified State Route 37 to County Line Road into Licking County, right into the Intel site as the main corridor of people traveling from Delaware County into the Intel site. So we are preparing for that as far as potential supply chain type development.
So the area in yellow is not a lot of residential. Is that a lot of open farmland at this point?
At this point, there are a couple of houses in there, but it is mostly large lots.
This is overlay zoning. It does not change the existing zoning or any impacts to current residents or property owners.
Good point. Thank you.
Correct.
Any other-
Nor future property owners unless they choose to enact the overlay zoning.
Any other questions? Gentlemen? Motion for approval on,
So move.
Second.
okay, roll call, please.
Jackson.
Aye.
Oliver.
Aye.
Trent.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried, the zoning is approved and be effective in 30 days after referendum. Thank you.
Yep. Is there two hearings? I know there were two applications. There was one for a map and one.
There's
for the
two,
hearing.
but we scheduled a second one for 7:45.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Thank you. Just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, Brian? Continue.
All right. I think the ball's in your court for any questions.
I think that last topic of conversation is probably just the important part to hit on, right? Because, and John has reiterated the overwhelming theme of the conversations with Columbus up until this point. And to both of your credits, I think what you have said to us right here now is almost verbatim the same impression. So, personally, there's no concerns there. Now we can say it as many times as we want to, and there will be concern of that. But I guess the main thing to talk about, right, is, the statement is there isn't any plan to annex any area in Harlem Township currently, right?
That's correct.
And I think it's probably important to relate that to the last statement made before we went into the hearing of if we might need to have an annexation agreement to identify the growth corridor for Columbus to move into Licking. And so basically what that's saying, and I'm just trying to paraphrase, put in a layman, if there's no plans to annex now, But what Columbus would like to see is Harlem provide them a path through Harlem to get past Harlem.
That's correct. That very well said. And, the annexation agreement or economic development agreement can both achieve that goal. First, by making clear that there's no opportunity for Columbus to annex into other areas. And like you said, a mutually identified path that could provide for growth at some point in the future. And I will say that as of today, there are no plans to expand into Licking County by the city of Columbus.
And this would probably be a similar situation as with Hoover.
Mhm.
Like your annexation agreement would encompass land that the city would own.
That's correct.
So before any annexation would happen, we'd have the agreements would have to happen, everything would have to be in place, and then Columbus would have to buy some property.
We would have to have the agreement of the property owners, and it would either be the property owner making the decision that they would allow for that expansion, or the city of Columbus acquiring that property and then using it for an annexation.
So I think that's one point that we've tried to drive home over the last year is that no one is going to come and annex you.
Mhm.
You have to seek it out as
That's
a
correct.
property owner. And so, I think that that's the important one of the important threads of conversation here to make sure that we're all crystal clear on is it's not a predatory point of view. Like
That's correct.
this is an opportunity
Mhm.
that folks may take.
Absolutely. And, part of our discussion would be what type of annexation would be allowed in that expansion area. Would it be a good old fashioned annexation? Is it an expedited type 1 or 2? It wouldn't be expedited type 3. But again, this is in partnership with the township. It's not uncommon to have requirements for a certain amount of notice before something like that is done. Sometimes there's a requirement that kind of sit down face to face and make sure we're still on the same page. Again, these are things that we'd have to work through together.
Just and if the question, right, like we're looking for a diagonal path up through the corner of the township to get to Licking. If you don't have any property owners in there that are interested in being City of Columbus, how does Columbus handle that?
We don't annex.
And how does that impact the greater relationship?
Doesn't impact it at all.
It doesn't totally stop any conversation of economic opportunity between Harlem and Columbus. It just kind of makes that part more difficult for Columbus.
What the township is agreeing to there is typically would be expedited type 1 annexation. The township is saying we are not going to contest this annexation. We agree that you can do it in this area, whereas that would not be an option anywhere else in Harlem Township.
Steve?
So maybe a follow on to Adam's question. Steve Eisenbrown, Harlem Road. So great discussion. If someone so when you do an agreement where you would spell out the future, it would be by parcel number, literally, that would be kind of put in reserve for future consideration for this corridor.
That's the way.
Kind of the way that.
That's correct.
Okay. And so that really fences it in to that path. So then and you don't know when you might want that, right? So as time rolls on, or if someone's living in that path currently, and, they're kind of done, they're ready to move into a senior center or whatever. If they came to you, would you then annex? Or is part of the no annexation agreement saying, nope, until we light the fuse to build this corridor, we're not going to, we will flat not do annexation. I mean, is it that hard and fasted, or is it, if it's opportunistic to pick up that piece, is that something you think you would consider?
Typically in that situation, the city would approach the property owner or the property owner would approach us about purchasing a
Right,
parcel.
right.
Just because we purchase a parcel doesn't mean that we have any intention of annexing. And the fact that a parcel was available would not be the trigger for annexation.
Okay, so you would just become a landowner at that point for that parcel. So that's where, again, as we get our language right around here about annexation, and we keep kind of trying to repeat after me how this stuff works. So it wouldn't be an annexation. It would be that you just took an advantage that perhaps the easiest way for that landowner to sell would be to come see you first and just see if you had a mutually acceptable position on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, that helps me. Okay. Thank you.
And probably worth saying that everything that we're speaking on right now is totally hypothetical.
Yep.
No plans. And yeah, not necessarily in response to your question, Steve. I just felt like it was important to ask, right? Because this is when the ears start to perk up, is when we start using the A word. And so I just thought it was important that we all understand there's no current plans, there's no formal agreements. It's just conversation, hypothetical conversation.
And an important point that Brian made at the last meeting was, this is the beginning of a series of conversations that I think are going to take some time to work through. And so that nothing's going to be rushed into. The entire process will be transparent. And residents will have every opportunity to speak into this process.
Oh, absolutely. It won't work if we don't do it that way.
Yes.
Yes, Bob.
What do you envision the length of time for the agreement?
That's a great question. 25 years.
Question, just so we pick it up on the mic.
Sorry.
Yeah, Bob asked, how long would the initial agreement with Columbus be? How long would it extend for?
Right.
Before, I assume it's renewed?
Yep.
Thanks.
25 years is a typical length. There's always renewal language in there. There's also always language if someone chooses to either seek an amendment to the agreement or seeks to leave the agreement. Those would all be standard terms that our attorneys, your attorneys would hammer out as part of those conversations.
And Brian, in your experience, the agreements, do they typically protect both parties in events of changes in administration, personnel, et cetera?
Absolutely. It gives certainty and predictability to residents and developers.
And if residents would like to go online, they can read prior agreements that the city of Columbus has made with Blendon Township, et cetera, Plain Township, and you can see the language that is in a typical agreement around a topic like annexation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we have another hearing.
Yep.
Can you stay for another hearing?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. This hearing is been asked by Harlem Township. It's number 2503, and it is AR1 and FR1 districts. It's adding the CLRC overlay to existing zoning parcels. And I believe this one's listed by parcel number, isn't it, Holly?
Yes, correct.
Yes, the document contains that.
Right. So the prior rezoning was the map amendment. This is your text amendment to, or do I have that backwards?
I think you got it right.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
this is the text amendment to include this additional area in the text of your zoning resolution. The prosecutor's office advised that we do two separate applications for this.
Two separate applications, two separate hearings for the same thing.
Yes.
Government.
By doing this puts parcel numbers on the properties that we just put in the overlay area. Identifies the parcel numbers and the present owners.
Correct.
And once again, it went through the zoning commission without any issues and regional planning also. Is there any questions? Gentlemen?
No questions, and move to approve the motion.
Second.
Second. Oh, roll call again, please.
Jackson,
Aye.
Oliver.
Aye.
Trainer.
Aye.
Motion carried. The application's approved. It'll be effective in 30 days after referendum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
Okay. Is there any other questions, Brian? Yeah, Jerry.
Question is, on the recent acquisition of land into Genoa Township, how does that affect Westerville's potential annexation,
Right.
if at all?
That's a great question. So the city of Columbus has owned for some time property around Hoover Reservoir in Franklin County, and then extending up into Genoa Township, all the way up to Galena. So what we've done is file for annexation for the southernmost parcel in Franklin County. So that would take all the property we own there. That would mean there is no path for Westerville to annex into Harlem Township. No, absolutely. If I could, one quick thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention. I think we all know that we're in a housing crisis in Central Ohio. Up until about 2020, we're building a house for every job that we created. We're not keeping up with that now. And that is part of what's driving really the explosive growth of housing costs, in addition to materials and labor. We do want to partner with you to identify what, and I'm not going to say affordable housing because that scares people. It's housing that your residents can afford. That's all it is. Where's that partnership? Where's the right place for that kind of growth? And what does that growth look like? Our hope is that Harlem Township will be a willing partner as we work regionally on, what is the right strategy for residential growth going into the next decade.
What I appreciated was your emphasis on having an appreciation for our rural character and maintaining that, and for our strategic growth. And so I think it'll be fascinating as we work with Crossroads in Columbus and we look at our current zoning and our current overlays and see how those align with Columbus and how that conversation unfolds. And I know I'm glad that you brought this up because I'm sure it's a critical area of concern for residents, and they want to hear us talk about it. And we haven't talked about it yet. You just heard us talk about it as much as we've talked about it. And so that will be an ongoing conversation. But I think there's mutual respect on both sides that we understand each other's strategic priorities, and we want to see those align.
Right.
And we will work toward that goal.
Absolutely.
Question. When you say, you said not affordable housing, because that scares people, housing that is affordable. Do you in Columbus consider that to be single family homes in residential areas? Do you consider that to be apartments, condos? I mean, kind of what do you guys consider to be affordable housing or housing that's affordable?
Right. I'm going to try not to get too deep in the technical on this, but I have to go a little bit deep in the technical. So when we just in the city of Columbus, not with our regional partners, think about affordable housing, term we would use, we think about it in the context of city incentives. It could be a tax increment financing district. It could be a community reinvestment act area. It could be a NCA. These are all tools that we can use that help make sure that new residents are paying their fair share for things like new infrastructure that comes along with their development. When we think about single family homes, we look at 120% AMI. And that is something the federal government issues for the Columbus region every year. And it's something that is tied to the size of the family. So that would be our approach. Harlem Township may have a different approach, may have a different set of incentives that you're open to considering for your new development. One thing we have not discussed, and I'll bring it up tonight, and I think it's important for the discussion is, what does Harlem Township want to consider, if any incentive, for any sort of new development that happens here in your township? And I think, when folks hear incentive, they typically think subsidy, and that's not what it is. It really is making sure that new residents have paid their fair share, and the burden of new infrastructure isn't falling on the entire township.
And this is something that developers are accustomed to working with.
Oh, absolutely.
This is
Yes.
part of their language and bread and butter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
None of this is unique. None of this is unique. And I think that's the great thing, because we're going to have a lot of different places that we can look to for examples of how it might play out, if this is something that you want to consider.
Any other questions? Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, can you, and perhaps you already said it, but not in a way that it was clear to me. If this is to be a win-win, what is the win on both sides? So
Right.
you're getting property tax monies to Columbus. What are the wins for Harlem Township? And how does this protect the rest of the perimeter of Harlem Township with this type of partnership?
Right. Absolutely. Great question. So, first of all, it begins with the annexation agreement that says, hey, we can't annex in these other areas. And that's it. That's the end of the discussion. Second, it provides for a partnership when you have economic development activity. So what does that mean? If we entered into a JED, Joint Economic Development District, and there are more acronyms in housing than, Joe knows a lot of them that I don't. So I'll just put it that way. When we look at an economic partnership like that, Columbus has the ability to apply our income tax rate only to that parcel and only to that economic development. And what we would do is craft an agreement for how much goes to who, right? It could be 25% to Columbus, 75% to the township. I think if you look at, for example, our agreement with Lockbourne, we are, I think, very understanding of the development needs of areas like that. And the trigger for paying back to Columbus is pretty high in that agreement. That's something that you would see here as well.
And the key there for us is to know we don't have the ability to levy that.
That's correct.
And that's why we need the partner.
That's correct. And the property taxes that are paid in the township, not a dime of that would come to Columbus. Every dime of the property taxes that come in keep flowing the same way they are today. So I think that's another really important thing. So, what do we get out of this? We get responsible strategic growth. We get economic development that works for all of us. And we get a partner in housing that, again, is responsive to who you are as a community and what you want as a community, but help us as a region deal with this housing crisis that we're dealing with today. And I apologize, I'm way too talkative.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, Mike?
Mike Cannon, Centerville, Druid. When you're talking about that corridor through us,
Mhm.
so let's say you're going to come across the bottom corner of Harlem.
Mhm.
And let's say you need to annex this 100-acre property
Mhm.
to get that. That property then, if the owner agrees to it, is going to have Columbus's zoning, correct?
That's correct.
Is there any restriction we can put on that as to,
Yes.
or can there be?
Yes, there can be conditions on what Columbus would be allowed to do in terms of rezoning that property. Every property that is annexed into Columbus is annexed as rural. That is our lowest, sort of range for any sort of development. And then it would be on the property owner to seek rezoning And we could certainly have, discussion of that in the annexation agreement.
Okay, but let's say that the property owner at that time, let's say they have a 100-acre property.
Mhm.
And they come to you guys and say, we want to put high density housing. on that property."
Mhm.
Would they be able to get that, or is there anything we can put in the agreement that says any property you get an annex cannot have that kind of density on its properties?
We can put in a limit to density there. We can put in a limit to use. If there's a desire to, maintain residential, for instance, in that area of the township, we can be clear that it could be residential, it could be mixed use, it could not be manufacturing, industrial, any kind of like sort of big box stores, things of that nature for commercial. When we think about mixed use in this context, it's sort of mom and pop shops and restaurants and things of that nature.
So you could potentially write it into the contract that it could keep Harlem zoning on that piece of property.
We wouldn't be able to keep Harlem
Type.
zoning,
Let's say
but
type
yes,
zoning.
we could put in there, you can't have more than this density. You can't have these kinds of uses, things of that nature. Yep.
Well, we have, the recently adopted overlay districts
Mhm.
right in that area. And so it would seem like that's the model for, I mean, if it was good enough for us, it ought to be good enough for us, even if it was being administered by Columbus.
Yep.
And so I would think that's the starting point to see if the way that that's spelled out, along Fancher Road there, kind of meets the need. So I know the ball's in our court, but if you haven't got a copy of our overlays for that area, we should get, because it's got architectural
Yep.
design guy. I mean, it's pretty clear as to
Yep.
what you can do with it in our mind.
Yep, absolutely.
And so that would be, I think, a starting point.
Right.
Safe to say that in the hypothetical that you're talking about, the result couldn't be listed as an adoption of the existing Harlem overlay, but the restrictions on what that zoning could become could be almost a copy and paste
Yes,
of what the overlay.
that is correct.
Yeah.
And that's a really good idea to kind of start with what that overlay already tells us.
Right.
And let's see how that would kind of equate to the zoning that Columbus has in place.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
One more question.
Sure.
And then when we're talking about this agreement that you could potentially have with Harlem, if
Oh, you don't have to be
you're
nice.
not gonna put, you're not gonna put a hard requirement in there that says we have to have so much workforce housing.
No, I think that we have to, that we wouldn't have workforce housing. That's another term that's used for affordable housing in the city of Columbus. Again, it's got to be, I think, residential that works for Harlem Township. And you've already gone through the hard work of identifying what you want in terms of, densities and areas for growth. We were happy to see that you looked at, and I think it was a very smart way to think about it, limit your high density along the county line so that it kind of mirrors what you're going to see over the line into Franklin County. And that really does protect other areas of the township. First of all, because there won't be sewer capacity to accept that based on where we're at today. And second of all, that it would be part of your overlay and your zoning process. So I think that was a really smart way to approach that. And we've been happy to have Holly in all of our meetings, and she's been great to work with as well. Plug for you, Holly.
Yeah, Johnny.
Say you get your corner of the township.
Mhm.
And you do annex that, and you
Mhm.
still follow our recommended density in our overlay and stuff.
Mhm.
And you've said that you have no intention of expanding your annexation.
That's
What
correct.
if somebody comes to you, neighbor
Mhm.
comes to you and says, we'd like to be part of Columbus?
Right.
Then again, because they're right next to you, are you gonna say no?
Yes,
You would say no.
that is correct.
Because it would be in the agreement.
It would be in the agreement. That's it. Nothing else.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? We appreciate you coming in.
Thanks very much, Brian.
Hey, I really appreciate
Thank
you
you.
providing the opportunity. Trustee, been great to work with, and look forward to working with all of you and your residents as we consider this partnership. And I'm going to try to not run over the fire chief's feet over here.
You can't even feel them anymore.
I'm still in the UK and asleep, so we're good.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you. Introduce Joe.
Yeah. So it's very important to recognize here that the reason Brian Clark was in this room tonight is because Joe Simonella said to me several months ago, as you're thinking about your relationship with Westerville or New Albany or Johnstown or whomever, you really need to consider sitting down and having a conversation with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is the city of Columbus. I don't know if I would have done that on my own, but you can see that that conversation was very important to begin. And so I want to thank Joe for putting that bug in my ear and for reaching out to Brian and saying, hey, you need to sit down with Harlem Township. And Joe is a part of our first two meetings. Because of his experience, his ear is essential, I think, as we continue this relationship with Columbus because of what he can hear and I or others cannot hear in the course of a conversation and the perspective that he lends. Tonight, I asked him to come in because as the trunk line is finished in the southwest corner of the township, and we begin to think about where do we want the sewer to run from there, the county has a concept, and Joe has thought about that and said, hey, there are alternatives. Joe's not the only developer that can think about this and provide alternatives. If there are other developers that look in this and have a better idea, I think they should come forward and say, hey, I think you need to think about this too. But I think it's important for our residents and for our trustees to hear kind of where we are at this point in time, recognizing we have lots of time to make a decision that ultimately I think the trustees will be able to weigh in on with the county, and so that our residents are aware of the start of this and of the implications of these decisions. And again, transparency is important. So, Joe, thanks for being here tonight, and let you roll. I'll share my screen here.
Who like Mike, Joe Simonello, 7858 Calverton Square, New Albany. Trustee Trainer Jackson, we've had the opportunity to go over the material item. We have not, but that's why, we're here tonight. I think to start out, I need to stay focused just on sanitary sewer tonight. Our passion is land planning, and the reason we are focused on Harlem Township and invested in Harlem Township is we believe Harlem Township has the opportunity like no other community in Central Ohio. The amount of land you have and the reason why it hasn't been developed like Genoa, like Orange, like anything on the west side of Hoover Reservoir is because it's never had sewer. And now that sewer, it can't develop any more than what it has, which it has developed in a great way with large lot rural, the rural character. And that can be maintained through the vision, but now that sewer is going to be here, development And I think through all your planning and the mixed use and the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan, development is going to occur, but it can occur in a very special way. But we're here tonight to talk about sewer, but before I get into the plan, Brian got into a little bit of the details. Good development, great development is usually a public-private partnership. You can't think of any development in Central Ohio, the Arena District, the Short North, Jerome Village, what we did in Grove City at Pinnacle Golf Course. Those take public-private partnerships. So two of the financial tools mentioned tonight. And when I say private, it's not just a developer, it's the private large property owners as well. Because the JED agreement that could be entered into by the city of Columbus with Harlem, enabling Harlem to generate income tax revenue from new residents. And we all want the new growth to pay its way, like Brian said. That takes the consent of the property owner, just like an annexation would. The other tool that we utilize a lot is a new community authority, which you can add additional. One typical way of the township receiving revenue is to add on millage, so it effectively acts as additional property taxes on the new property. What we did when we worked with Berkshire Township and the outlet mall, go to the outlet mall, you pay 0.25% extra. If you look at the bottom of your receipt, every sale, there's 0.25 cent, not percent, yeah, 0.25 cent charged. That is what is funding 17 million of the new interchange that is just getting started up there. So those, the NCA and the JED, takes the private side, and it's not, just the developer, and that sets the tone a little bit for the meeting and what we have here tonight. Is that what got scanned through, or can we scroll to the left, John? Just a little.
Which way do you want to go? This way?
Yep, and then down a little.
There you go.
So what we're looking at here overall is last February, we had vested interest in properties, but how would the county and the township service up to Center Village with sewer, which is the current tributary line that Delaware County is allowed to serve, right? And let's see if I can get that. Well, down in the lower left-hand corner, where the yellow is the shaft. And the yellow dotted line is running up Harlem Road. And we've been in contact with Delaware County Regional Sewer for a year or more, knowing that this is coming. Most recently, had a physical meeting with them on March 12th, about a month ago. And what they were saying is their preferred alternative at the time was the yellow line. Months ago, they came to the township and said, we are Delaware County Regional Sewer is going to invest first, and we're going to get the sewer to developable properties in the township. In the beginning, the estimate was $7 million to run a 48-inch sewer, which is a big sub trunk. 5 foot is what's coming up from Columbus. And they were going to get it up Harlem Road, and that's shown about to the Yeager property. Then the more they investigated, there is rock subgrade along that path. And with the tightness of all the residents along Harlem Road, they said that is going to cost $15 million because they want to tunnel it. And we met with them and said that's okay. I mean, it gets it there. But the more we thought about it, and I pulled out our plan from February of last year, the idea that you would spend $15 million and not open up any of development property so you could get your TIF revenue that has already been passed by the township. How is the township going to pay for $7.5 million worth of sewer? Right? And with that route, there is no revenue from property taxes. There are no new residents to collect the income tax. There are no new properties for the TIF or the NCA to collect from. So when we looked at it and where the three arrows are pointing would be the optimal area for the county to invest to get the sewer to spur development and enable new development to pay back the sewer, right? Through all the economic development tools that were mentioned and will be worked out in an economic development plan. The location of the red manhole there is a location where the 48-inch line that would stop there. A 36-inch sub trunk will continue north. And these are preliminary numbers and have to be engineered by Delaware County Sewer, but this was done by a professional engineer and we've looked at it. It also is an area where it can go east. So the design shows a 30-inch sub trunk going east. So it kind of makes sense if Delaware County Regional Sewer wants to invest in the sub trunk. Well, let's finish out the 48-inch sub trunk. The advantages are written up there. Number one, it would allow development to happen in like almost three directions. The Jaeger, it doesn't matter if the sewer's on the front, the western side of their parcel, or if it's on the eastern side of their parcel, because the way their property is, 2/3 of it drains to the east. And this naturally sets up the properties off of Miller Paul could also start development because they will be draining to the west. The properties to the north theoretically could start to be developed because they will drain south. So the cost estimate for we have three different alternatives on how to get to that red manhole. In the last month, we've worked with 12 property owners in the area to provide for three different alternatives to get there. The cost range for Delaware County Regional Sewer to evaluate once they kick off their design. Right now, I think they're a couple weeks away from actually signing the contract with Black and Veatch, the design engineer. Then they would like to have a kickoff meeting with the township to get the township's input on where they would want sewer to run. But so the estimates range from 13 million to 23 million on the three different alternatives. So it could be less than the 15 million because the routes that we pick, you'll be able to open cut. You won't need the tunnel. And all 12 property owners have agreed to have their property considered, that they would give the easements in exchange for taps if they have existing homes, or in the case of I think it's the Savior Church, Christ Savior Church, they're on Fancher. They would like pastor there that actually have the church hooked up, their septic system taken off, which is kind of a small price for Delaware County regional sewer when you talk about acquiring easements. The other part that the private side, when we get involved, Delaware County Regional Sewer, their plan is now to take a year to design it, a year to install it, and there wouldn't be sewer available to tie into till 2028. They had 9 months in their process to acquire easements. What the property owners would like to do, because they first need to negotiate easements, then go out and do soil borings, because one or two or maybe none of these routes will have rock, to get enough data and information so they can effectively design the sub truck run. So what so the advantages are the difference in cost, but the sewer, the good part of all three alternatives run through Mr. Miller's property, who's out showing, talking to Brian, I think, in the hallway now, but it runs through the mixed use area that is your highest density in the overlays. It would generate the economic development dollars because the township has already passed TIF legislation. That area is covered by a TIF, but it's only a commercial TIF. But at the densities that are on Mr. Miller's piece in that area, 12 units an acre, that almost has to be multifamily. 500 units or so in this area, just through the TIF alone, would pay back or pay the townships $7.5 million. The county, we believe we would need, the township needs to negotiate. They would have the money to fund it, but they want to be paid back half, is what their request is on the table today, and it'll be up to the trustees in negotiation with them. So just the TIF in and of itself on 500 units would pay the township share. And then moving forward, those economic development tools can continue the sub-trunk east, continue it north as development occurs. The other big advantage is this would take the Westerville Estates treatment plant offline. If they would just run that yellow line up Harlem Road, who knows when and if. It probably would be not too far in the distant future, but in development time, it could be another 3 or 4 years before the sewer gets extended. So the mobile home park can be taken offline, and the environmental situation they have with their plant well documented in the EPA would be gone. The running it and picking up the mobile home park as well would end up somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million just in tap fees that can be thrown into the equation for the run. And if they run the yellow line, you don't have that. One thing that we think about. And just know when we look at this and we look at the township overall, and again, because we think it could be amazing, is you're gonna have, and there's some work started on Center Village overlay, right? And the sanitary up to this point can only go up the Center Village Road. That is the limit. It's a little bit lower than go up to Center Village on the west side of the township. It goes a little further over towards county line north. But right in this area from Miller Paul through here, it's pretty much Center Village Road. When we met with them, I asked them, because if sewer can be run, there's a minimum slope. You have to have a minimum slope so the effluent keeps running downhill, right? What they have designed, and I said, Tiffany, what you are doing now is going to determine whether that tributary area can be expanded, which is common practice. What they were looking at when they drew up that agreement in 1994, same data, the topo really hasn't changed, but it gets down to 10 foot, 5 foot, that if that sewer is run at minimum slope, we believe the tributary area could be expanded at least as far south as we are here from Center Village north. So then you could have a Center Village development that truly is encompassing around 605 and Center Village, and be able to create new infrastructure in the Center Village north, because it's open farm ground where it's hard to create new village here south. So they said, no, Joe, we're not running it at minimum slope, because we're afraid if we put that 48-inch sewer in, there won't be enough flow into it. And if it's at a flat slope, then there's going to be effluent sitting in the bottom of the pipe if there's not enough flow, and it could erode the pipe. And so the other advantage, they would have 300 mobile home units draining in immediately, so they won't have to worry about flow. So these routes for the township, to get to the optimal location, it would pretty much, the county, you said, hey, you're going to run the first run. Well, you guys, let's run all the 48-inch sub trunk that's needed. Then development needs to take it from there. And I think they've been clear on that, the sewer gets extended by private property owners and developers as they develop their property. There are a group of us, we're working with the Yeagers, we're working with Tim Dye. We don't have interest in each other's property, but we understand collectively working together is going to be for the betterment of all. So let me see if I covered all the advantages. So what the Delaware County Regional Planning, the next step is to have a meeting with the township, a kickoff meeting, Tiffany called it, to get the township's input and desire. This is input, looking at it globally. It's also input from the property owners, that if the same amount of money is spent, this opens up development without having to spend more money on top of 15 million. So development can occur to pay the township's portion.
Ed,
Any questions?
Ed,
Hi, so where's that manhole? Where is the hub?
The hub,
Yeah, where,
Is-
from whence you go in three directions.
so when you look at, right, you look at the north line, the bottom of the hub, and then where it heads north, it's right in between properties. So you have Jaeger property to the,
Don't know where the
We
Jaeger
don't
property
know.
is.
Right.
Uh,
Give us roads.
it's in between, it's not halfway in between. And,
talking to Shelley, I know.
okay, thanks. Harlem Road is the yellow line, right?
Here's Harlem.
And Miller Paul's labeled, sorry for the small print. But I don't know if you scroll down, John,
Is this Miller Paul?
it's. If you drive Miller Paul, it's out in the field, and if you drive Harlem, it's out in the field. And when it goes north, it services multiple properties on both sides. So development can happen off Miller Paul and drain to the west. Development can happen off of Harlem and drain to the east. One thing Tiffany did inform me that properties on the west side of Harlem would have to use lift stations because of the topo to tie in. There's other things like this point where it is, because it's a sub-trunk and I say it ends up on a certain property owner's property. Well, they would probably be required to give the easement to extend that sub-trunk through their property, even if they don't do it. If they're not developing their property, but a property owner to the north or to the east, they could come get the sewer as part of their development. So it's not blocking anybody from development, but your development needs to be able to pay for that.
So what's the cross east-west road immediately above the red dot, just for a frame of reference? I mean, how far up is Center Village, for example?
Well, Centerville, if you go all the way,
So there's Robbins Road is right here.
That's what I'm looking for.
yeah,
I
and then
don't see
keep
it.
And there's
going.
Miller
Yeah, the
Paul.
top of the map is Center Village.
So there you can see Robbins Road and Miller Paul to give you your bearings.
Hard to see your marker.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mouse is.
Yeah, it's not big enough.
So is this east or west of the mobile park? The big red dot,
The big red dot is
North.
north of the mobile park.
North.
north.
Yeah, the mobile park is all the way. Yeah.
So this is Fancher Road across the bottom.
Yeah.
There's Fancher Road, and this is behind the Methodist Church on Fancher Road in those open fields.
So does that get you halfway to Center Village?
Oh, no.
No,
Third of the way to?
Oh, no.
Center Village?
scroll all the way down, yeah.
Probably about
I mean, you're not, Center Village Road is way up here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Way out, it's,
But if we're trying to serve the Center Village down collectively, is that gonna do the job?
The deeper you are, the better at this point.
you're gonna, yeah. Center Village down, you're gonna need the 36-inch sub-trunk, eventually serve Center Village.
But it would run north from the red dot?
It would run north from the red dot. There are other,
Okay, that's what I'm
and
trying to
then,
understand.
and then the east, so there is another east.
And here's Center Village Road. So
That's Center Village and 605 where that ends.
Thank you.
But then you have the other sub-trunk that started out as the 30-inch heading east. It ends up all the way
across
and all the way up
and up into the northeast corner.
the service. All the way up to Center Village, Montgomery Road.
So the parcel where the manhole is, the projected manhole, does that have a street address or parcel number?
Yeah, I can.
We can get that for you.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, later,
Okay,
we can talk.
all right.
Steve?
Yeah, I guess either Joe or you guys, can somebody explain who shoulders the burden for running this thing? I mean, when I remember the early discussions with Tiffany, I remember at one point it being reported that Delaware County was gonna pay to get us to essentially pick your spot for a red dot, but gonna get the main trunk to that point.
Yeah, they were going to run up Harlem Road. And then after some exploring, that's when the rock came into play and the micro tunneling, and that's what doubled the cost. They were gonna get up.
So, but Dave, are they saying, okay, that was on our back, we were gonna pay for that, but given it's doubled now,
They
you're
want
gonna
us to,
have to pay
yeah,
for it?
they're wanting us to pay half of it.
Well, why don't we tell them we're not interested?
Well, that could be what happens.
I mean, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, why, I mean, because I think what I mean, I'm just trying to process this for the first time seeing this. But I think what I heard Joe says, we're gonna use the revenue and suck up all the TIF revenue out of the trailer park with all those connections to offset if we have to pay $7 or $8 million to get to the red dot.
Yeah.
So now all the work we've done through the concept of TIFs and getting revenue into the township from these border areas to help us financially run this place is basically all gonna get shot in one fell swoop here. Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's my sense.
Well, I'd like to explain, because I didn't want to get into the financial.
Well, and we don't need to do
No,
that
but
tonight, but I'm just
I'm gonna
saying,
say that's
first of all, it's
not.
news to me that they're coming to us. Cause I've never heard that before.
Well, I talked to Tiffany yesterday and she informed me in a week or two, they'd be announcing who the designer'd be. And then at some point after that, they'd have the kickoff meeting that Joe just mentioned.
We got some hard thinking to do, don't we?
Exactly.
I mean,
We've got,
this is not an automatic in my book.
Is the kickoff meeting when they were gonna tell us they wanted us to fork up $7 or $8 million, or were we
yeah,
gonna, did I miss
that's
the email?
already, they've already mentioned that if they do that northern route, that the route was gonna go up Harlem Road approximately to Yeager's, is that about right?
Yes,
Okay, the original 7
that's what shows.
7 million, they were gonna pick up that tab. But then they ran into
Yeah, oh, it's gonna be harder than we thought it was
Yeah.
gonna be.
Right.
Twice the cost, you don't pay
So-
the other half.
yeah,
Then I guess the part that I'm missing is, when were they gonna tell us that?
They already
Or
have-
did they
they
send the
have.
message?
they had,
They have.
I missed
yeah.
that.
But without the design crew, they don't know exactly, and that's another story, how long it'll take them to design it.
So kind of,
But
so just independent of where you want to put the dot,
Yeah,
right? Cause it isn't gonna be just on Delaware. You know, your proposal to get to the dot is gonna be a shared cost then between Delaware County for the first 8 or so they were good for. And then Harlem's gonna have to come up with the rest, and to raise that through, you know, bonds or through the TIF money is essentially gonna drain the benefit of those TIF dollars to
Well,
pay for it.
no,
And
I mean, that's a misstatement.
Okay, well, help me
I
understand
will
that,
if you let
but
me.
is there gonna
If
be
you let-
cost
if
to
you-
Harlem?
No, new growth pays the way. The NCA that needs property owner consent, the JED.
Yeah,
So we have modeled, get into that later. But your overlay, the way it is, mixed
Yeah.
use,
yeah,
up to Center Village,
right,
3 units an acre, the developable acres, about 10,000 homes.
yeah,
Over the next 20, 30 years, right?
yeah,
If you apply the TIF model, if we ran the JED at 1%, I think partnering up with Columbus where they had 2.5% to share, that's conservative. We didn't have any of the homes appreciate during the model. We ran the model out to 2050. And the NCA charge an additional 4 mils of property tax on new residents income tax on
Right.
new residents.
Right.
It produces from now till 2050, 1.2 billion. And you're never going to have revenue come to the township from those vehicles unless you have development.
No,
So that to say that there's going to be.
I'm not
TIF
trying
money,
to
say there's
cast
going
it
to be,
that way,
no,
Joe.
there's,
I'm
to
just
say
trying
there's
to
going to be
learn.
TIF dollars sucked away. You're going to have TIF dollars continue sub-trunk into your roadways, dollars to maintain them once everything's up and running. But that is all needs to be developed in an
But our
economic
goal-
development plan.
But you're right, and our goal though is to put these structures in place and these revenue engines in place to be able to pay for the future infrastructure for Harlem Township. Not just to just get us a sewer.
Well, this infrastructure, 48-inch sewer, is serving your center village. That's why it's sized so big.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Well, center village
sized down, it's sized, it's servicing everything else along the way.
Right.
And the county sometimes reimburse developers. That hasn't been talked about. If it's above an 18-inch, they consider anything above an 18-inch, they'll give you credits on future tax. So there is a lot to negotiate, but meshing land use, economic development plan, utilizing the tools, so new development will pay for everything.
Cool. Hey, I'll stop now because I'm
So-
already out of my pay grade.
Yeah,
But I
and-
just would say that you guys have a lot of work to do here.
yes. And-
To figure out the finances of this in a manner in which you can then explain it to us.
Yeah, and so that we don't go too deep into the details tonight. I think we've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and that I wanted people to be aware of the problem/opportunity that faces the township and the work that has to be done as we move forward, and that now that we have our autonomy, this responsibility is going to fall on our shoulders to make good decisions going forward that are shared with the community. And so now you have an awareness of the extent of this problem. It's a good problem to have, and we're going to work to solve it in the near future with the help of subject matter experts that can shed light for us on these issues. So I appreciate that, Joe.
It's a great
Amy?
discussion.
Yes, Amy?
So just for clarity, you have said "we" many times in this discussion. Who's the "we"? Are you representing Harlem Township from a development like who's the "we"?
The we is a public-private partnership,
Who's that though?
okay, for a TIF.
Mhm. But I mean,
Private property owners cannot do a TIF.
sure,
That power lies with the trustees.
but is the
The
"we" just a number
trustees,
or is the "we"?
it will be Seminole development, but there will be other private, it will be the Jaegers if they want to develop their property. And because to have a JED to collect the income tax, you have to have property owner consent. To have an NCA to charge additional property taxes or charges on sales if there's commercial areas. Takes the property owner consent. But it also, the JED and the NCA takes the governmental side. So we've partnered with Berkshire Township, Delaware County, Grove City, Heath, Reynoldsburg, Columbus. Done projects in the pay as we grow to get Hamilton Road extended. Like Brian said, none of these incentive financial economic development tools are new, but it takes the public and private to work with it. How that could get paid for, a developer could say, I'll pay for it, I'll buy the bonds, I'll get paid back, tax-free interest on bonds. The county, in discussions years ago, or a year or so ago, they said, hey, we don't mind investing And I think what they're saying now is we'll invest without any repayment, up to 7, 8 million. That's to be negotiated, especially if you get the mobile home park paying tap fees that quick. But what I think they would potentially front the entire cost if they were shown, yes, when development occurs, we're going to get paid back through the tip, through the NCA, through a JED. And this is a drop in the bucket because you're going to need road infrastructure and everything else for development to occur.
Hey, Joe, real quick, if I may, because I think I understand Amy's question. To be frank, the township is not currently in a contract with Joe Simonella for any services. And Joe, is it a true statement to say that you did this due diligence on your own accord, just to have the information?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it on our accord and the other property owners' accord. I don't know if Russ left.
Correct, but not at the direction of the Board of Trustees of Harlem
Correct.
Township.
Yes.
Talk about between Harlem Road and North Hall, north of, Village, where's that going to be, north of that would be far back, how far back?
I'm sorry, not north of Center Village, north of Fancher. We're down. This is just north of Fancher behind, is it the Methodist Church?
Mhm.
About 5. Where would, what crossroads would those be at?
The mixed use overlay calls for everything south of Fancher Road from 12 to 8 units an acre across the whole southern part of the town. And it would start where the sewer, right? If you had 50 acres down in this quadrant, you could build 500 units with the current mixed use overlay.
That's the overlay. That's not a change of zone.
But it allows-
Yeah, let's move on. Yep.
Minimum 25 acres to then go for that kind of sense.
That's Harlem and Fancher going downtown.
That's behind the mobile home park.
I
Right.
got you.
So with respect to public comment, I think we'd like to probably move the meeting on to the next topic in respect of time as well. I will reiterate the same thing that I reiterated with Mr. Clark, that what we're talking about here is hypothetical. There are no plans, right? We have not even had Delco or any representatives from the county at a board meeting to discuss this in public forum, right? So where we decide to go from here, as Steve put, we've got some homework and diligence of our own to do as the board of the township. So we'll definitely be taking into consideration all of that. And again, those decisions will be made in public forum right here in this room.
Adam,
Yes, sir.
but I thought I heard Tiffany's trying to call a meeting to get agreement so that they can go ahead and let a contract.
Well,
I think it'd be something if they signed a contract for twice the price that they originally agreed to, but yet we have not agreed to pay half of it.
I'm just saying, I
You
mean,
know?
that was 3 weeks from now.
Yeah,
So-
I would encourage
No,
Tiffany to
that-
come on
that's-
over and talk about it.
That's not the timetable
Like it
now.
needs to be that.
No.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you for your time, Joe.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Joe.
It's good, Joe.
Lindsay on Zoom. Lindsay on Zoom.
She should.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello?
And I've got to stop sharing here just a second.
I don't know if
Can you hear me?
hey, there you are.
Hi there.
Hi there, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Speaking as Lindsay Kuhn, Chair of the Communications Committee. Please speak up if for some reason I cut out or you can't hear me. I have a couple of updates for the board. First, our committee has completed the spring township newsletter. It has been sent to the printer and should be in the mail before the weekend, so everybody stay tuned for that. A huge thanks to all of our committee volunteers and all the different department heads that are involved in gathering all the information for the newsletters, writing articles. I will say, I've said it once already, this quarter's edition is jam-packed, a lot of information for everybody to read through. Secondly, during our monthly meeting at the beginning of this month, we talked at length about the public feedback from the March 29 strategic planning input session, because that meeting specifically focused on how to foster communication and collaboration in the township. And obviously that's what we, are trying to do. So we felt that based off that public feedback, we've made really big strides in engaging those who may already be engaged, who are interested in an email list, who are following us on social media, but we have a large chunk that we need to be able to get to of people that don't know these avenues exist, and we need to spread awareness for the communication efforts that we're doing. That way, as many people in the township can be informed. So our committee members, we made a plan to rotate and split up, going to things like our community farmers markets, dropping off information at chicken noodle dinners, things like that, to both distribute our latest newsletter or our latest email, or to ask if anybody wants to join the email list. And the issue is that this made us realize, this public feedback made us realize that we will need much more printing capabilities than was originally thought at the beginning of the year when the printing and mailing budget was first created. So we think that the best course of action for now, and this is what I would like the trustee feedback on, is that, there is a printing and mailing budget. So we can go ahead and over the next month, get some printing done that we can utilize to perhaps at the upcoming chicken noodle dinner, for example. But then for the May trustee meeting, that maybe we should write up some sort of resolution for the trustees to review about distributing more funding to township printed communication so that we can do these efforts and reach a larger audience, just based off of what residents were asking for at that last meeting. So there's a couple of things that we would need to consider in this discussion. So the first would be our committee would need to just get some sort of good estimate about how much more money this printing would cost, but there's logistics involved in that decision. So would we be using our township office printers, for example? Like, do we have a cap on that? Does that have a cost? I know that sometimes when you have like printing contracts, it's per page, that kind of thing. Or would we be sending maybe stuff to Office Max or Staples? That way we could pass this out. Then there's another consideration on top of that. If we're purchasing prints, our committee is, we're a volunteer committee, so we don't have purchasing power. So how would we go about doing that? So there's some logistics involved, and that is what I wanted to ask the trustees tonight. Your thoughts on that, if you feel like that's a good idea to pursue, and if you like the idea of us coming with a resolution for the next meeting, and your thoughts on some of those logistical questions.
So 2 points. I do think it's important for you to create a cost estimate for what you think will be in addition to what's already been budgeted. But then secondly, I did have a conversation with the fiscal officer, and there is a means to meet some of the demand without passing a resolution at this point in time. So I think that we're good for now, Lindsay. But I think it would be important for you to develop a cost estimate for going forward.
Okay.
Agree, that's a good starting point. And I'm not sure, is there a charge on the printer per?
We get a
Used to be.
percentage free, and the toner and everything is free.
Yeah.
Because we have a maintenance, but I don't know, there's 3 different color tiers. And I, off the top of my head, I have no idea what that price is.
Yeah.
I have to inquire with our company that supports it.
So if you and Ashley could explore that a little bit, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashley, I can follow up with you on some of these questions. We're certainly not talking about printing. I don't think we're talking about printing thousands of pages at a time. I think we're mostly talking about several hundred at a time so that each month we can capitalize on public events. to reach people that we're not already reaching. So I can follow up with you on that, Ashley, if that would be a strain on our current office resources, or if we should look to external printers for that.
Okay, we can talk about that at our meeting that we set today.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
That's my basic update for communications committee. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, always a plug, if I may. So we have a great committee of consistently like 7 or 8 volunteers, and we still have room for more volunteers, including a vice chair position. A lot of the committees have like chairs and vice chairs. The vice chair position would include some additional responsibility in helping us send these emails, do this kind of printing logistics that I'm talking about, posting on social media, things like that. So always a plug for those listening that we still have that open.
Yeah, just to put an exclamation point on that, as we were meeting today about our strategic planning, and Lindsay was talking about all of the work that she's doing. I was concerned that here we have a volunteer that her to-do list is growing, and she's begun her own business in the last year. And I would sure hate to lose a quality volunteer because we've overburdened her. And so if there are folks in the township that could lend a hand, they've got a couple hours a week to come alongside and help this effort, it would be greatly appreciated.
Especially anybody with marketing experience. I mean, Lindsay, I think your entire team, if not the majority of the team, is made up of professional marketers, right? So I mean, we're doing a great job. You guys are doing a great job, and I appreciate the hard work that goes into that.
Absolutely. Everybody's been a great volunteer, and the vice chair specifically would just help with some of this like specific, we're all gathering information, and that's been really helpful, but the vice chair would help with some of the specific like sending of information and doing these logistics. So. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bill, thank you for the great job.
Thank you.
Holly?
Thank you. I have 3 things to cover tonight. First of all, I want to introduce Kelsey Miller. She is our newest employee at Crossroads. She comes to us with 8 or so years of economic development experience, as well as planning and zoning. I first met Kelsey on my first contract at Crossroads. She worked for Delaware County Economic Development, so she knows Delaware County. Her most recent job was with Connect Real Estate. Snuck her from there. So we're happy to have her aboard. You'll probably be seeing her a lot. I also want to give an update on the strategic planning process, and then also talk about our conversations with building up. So as far as strategic planning, we had our second community-wide meeting at the end of March. We had about 100 people at that meeting. We've had a development update given by Trustee Trainer, and then that was followed by creating implementation strategies for communications and engagement, which was one of the strategic priorities that has been identified so far through this process. The strategic priorities that we've identified, I've read them at the last meeting, but I'm going to read them again, and they're still being worked through. But what we've identified so far is balanced growth and development, rural lifestyle and autonomy, community engagement and collaboration, preservation and sustainability, safety and well-being, community identity and pride, establishing a village center, and vibrancy and quality of life. So those are what came out of our first community meeting. At our second community meeting, we dove deeper into the community engagement and collaboration, because we thought that was one that would definitely move forward and was a good starting point to help us to have these conversations with Lindsay's group of how do we continue to improve our communications. So at our next community meeting, we want to dive deeper into these other strategic priorities that have been identified and break into smaller groups and talk about each of those in more detail. Those strategic priorities have not been set in stone. We've had soup sessions that our steering committee has been doing as well as just some individual residents as well. Those soup sessions are things such as it's like a meeting in a box that came in a soup jar. And the residents would invite their neighbors, their friends, and ask them to come and help them work through this aspiration process that we worked through at the community meeting to engage in residents who had not already participated in that community-wide meeting. So these soup sessions, we had 9 of them, residents had 9 of them, and there were approximately 30 people that attended these soup sessions over the last 3 or 4 weeks. The common themes that have been reported to me are protecting green space and not wanting to see change. So we know that there's education that still needs to be pursued and delivered, and communication to our residents of Harlem Township to make sure that they're understanding that the sewers are coming, et cetera. So that is one thing that we saw come out of these soup sessions. What we will do is continue to look through the details of those soup session reports that the residents gave. And my team and Angela Crowell at Proud Communication, her team, we're gonna look through those over the next week. And we're gonna see if any of those strategic priorities need to be adjusted at all based upon the soup sessions. I'm also gonna run it by the steering committee tomorrow. We have our second steering committee tomorrow night. So we're gonna be looking at all of that as well. And then we're going to, I think Trustee Trainer is gonna talk a little bit later about having a time for the trustees to meet to prioritize these strategic, or rank the strategic priorities in order of importance for the township trustees. And then at the next community meeting, those would be presented and we would dive deeper into how do we implement each of those. The County Economic Development Plan will also be starting in early May. That's going to be led by Dana McDaniel at Delaware County Economic Development and the Montrose Group, as Trustee Trainer mentioned earlier. And then that next community-wide meeting will be on May 10th. And I assume it's in the morning, what we.
9 to 11.
9
Yeah,
to 11.
at the church.
So I'll pause there. That's my update on the strategic plan process. Do you have any questions on that?
So date been set for the next community meeting yet?
May 10th,
May 10th.
from 9 to 11. At Harlem Road Church.
At the church?
Yes.
Any other questions of what Holly spoke on?
And then last, conversations with Galena have been continuing. As you're aware, the township has put an overlay district along Trenton Road, also implemented a commercial tip in that area. Conversations of the potential of extending sewer down from Galena and entering into some kind of development agreement to protect us from future annexation in that north west corner of the township as well. So those conversations are continuing.
Do you or Pete, I don't know if we talked about this or not. It came up at the church meeting. There were some folks still didn't understand what the overlay was or TIF, or is there some definitions that we could possibly post on the website or?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
But Mike has written a great article on
Okay.
overlays that'll come out in the
So
next
that'll help.
mailing. That's excellent.
Yeah.
And then I think that we do need to keep that up.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the website or in the mailings, just pounding these themes again
Right.
and again.
Yeah,
I
we
think
might
is helpful.
approach one thing in a edition. Yeah.
And I will note, I did ask Pete Griggs to come to our next township meeting. He was in our meeting with Columbus, and I think it's good to get someone external to the township and a legal eagle's mind, get his opinion and perspective on this dialogue. And so for residents, next month, we'll hear from Pete Griggs and his opinion of where we are as a township in these economic waters. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
is there anything else you need from us to be?
You say that like you don't want to.
No, you're good.
You're good.
Thank you.
Steve? You had some comments?
Hello, Steve Eisenbrown, Harlan Road. Well, at the last trustees meeting, the topic of the east-west corridor surfaced, and which kind of surfaced out of a meeting that Gary Bowser had, and there was a video of that meeting of about 1 minute and 3 seconds where he talked about Center Village Road being part of the east-west connector. And I made comment at that meeting, boy, we need to be paying attention to this because it was kind of news to me. And as it turned out, Doug Riedel was there and he spoke after I spoke. And that led to John and I, through Doug's help, having a meeting was it last week? Whatever, last week with Doug and Gary and Rob. What's Rob's? Riley, his you could give this update, but his deputy. And, one of the questions was, boy, this seems like news to us. Where did this concept of a corridor come about? Because we knew about it from our comprehensive planning, and we had it, colored in on the map for Fancher, but, really had never had the discussion around Center Village. And, you hear east-west corridor and you go, oh my, 4-lane highway, whatever, what's going on? So I got educated through the conversation. We had spent 90 minutes, I think. And first of all, the first thing I learned about road planning, and maybe everybody in here knows this, but road planning strategies basically develop on demand. So, until there's a demand or a known future demand out there, there's really not much point talking about expansions of things. And so given Intel and other activities, what they're working on is how do people that want to, work over at Intel get from Delaware County, from the west to that site. And I know you can't see this, but actually I've emailed you this and I'm trying to get an electronic copy, but in January of 23, these guys,
Is it
looking,
one or two?
uh,
Or is it traffic one or two?
can you open it?
Yep.
Okay, well, we won't be able to read it, but I can point to it because it's really small. But they commissioned a study then where, you'll see it up there in a minute, but essentially showing and setting and putting numbers on the map here in 3 time frames of what's expected to be the traffic flow. So it starts with existing, and then the next little number underneath it is at what was it, opening, when it opens, so meaning when Intel opens. Yeah, can you go 180?
Do a clockwise.
Okay. So, and then the last number is kind of at full build out. So, all 10 fabs, probably 2050 or something. But it's their estimates of what the demand's going to be on the road surfaces. And so if you could read this, you'll be able to read it online, but if you go up to the yellow line at the top, when you look at this online, right here, Center Village, those numbers that you can't read basically say today, 1245 a day, at opening for Intel, 2800 a day, and at full build out, 7100 a day are the estimates. So then I said, well, okay, I don't really know what to make of that. So what does Center Village Road as a 2-lane highway have the capacity to handle? Because I think, before we start to see what, widening and all the rest. And the answer was like 9,800 vehicles. And so what I came away from, and I'm going to stop here, but is that there is no master plan to turn it into a route, Sawmill Parkway going up Center Village. The road as it's there probably can handle the demand with a few caveats. The caveats are as the number of cars go up, the biggest issues are how do you handle intersections? And so, we're becoming the king of roundabouts. And that's great. I mean, that helps keep traffic moving. The next thing you got to think about are turn lanes. So, a left turn lane and or a merge lane, coming on to a road. So you might imagine, and this is just my thought, but you might imagine someday at Miller Paul, well, if traffic is converging there, something's got to happen because just a stop sign may not be good enough. But that's down the road. These guys have no plan. And in fact, the roundabouts, both existing and future, show on this map. So it's quite helpful to kind of see what they're thinking, but you get a picture of the yellow lines, give you a sense of coming through Harlem Township, what are the traffic flows that we probably need to think about for the future. That would mean potentially shoulders on Center Village. It might mean, and we don't even have a bike lane for that matter on Center Village, right? It's treacherous out there. And if you're gonna do that, you probably gotta push ditches back a little bit. I was sort of chuckling after our meeting. AEP just put all those nice new phone poles all the way down. Well, they probably would be in the way now if they ever went to do this, but hey, you don't worry about that. So I'm done. My message, I guess, is in my mind, there's no sky, is falling. And we had a terrific discussion. And if you want more of this, go to the Grange Hall next Wednesday night at 5:30, from 5:30 to 8. There's going to be a meeting and you'll see it announced on the website as well as in the newsletter with Delaware County, Licking County, and Franklin County for just a dialogue about what transportation activities and initiatives are being planned for our general area. So I would highly recommend, I don't know how many we can get in there, but that's being put on next Wednesday night. So anyhow, thank you. That was, and we'll get this out on the website as well, just as a reference. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Doug Rito, you want to go ahead? We've got two things for you, I think, the road
Yes.
contract and the Jake break resolution.
Yes. Thank you, trustees. Doug Riedel, from the Delaware County Engineers Office. The first thing is we have a road improvement program contract for all of our townships. So I'm heading around to all the townships this month to get those approved. We've opened bids and the Shelley Company was apparently a bidder. So we're moving forward to getting all the contracts taken care of. Is there any questions on the contract itself?
No, I've got it here. There's our work that we proposed to do, and I don't have a list of that right now. $242,216.50 was what our contract price is. So with that, I'd make a motion that we accept that contract. Have a second.
Second.
Roll call, please. Aye.
Oliver,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We'll get that signed. All three of those. The other thing, you want to elaborate on the Jake break legislation we got here?
Yes, there is a part of the Ohio Revised Code that allows townships to install no engine braking signs on county and state routes if a resolution is passed by the board. An issue came up a couple, I don't know how long ago that was. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
Where there was a resolution that came, was passed by the board, but because of some of the things that we need to do on a state route, it needs to be a little bit different as far as the wording so that it gets approved by ODOT. I'm not saying it's not going to, it's just that there's certain steps we need to go through. So this resolution is before the board to kind of get us started to get those signs installed.
Okay. The resolution we have here tonight's 25-416T011. authorizing installation of no engine brake signs. Whereas the Harlem Township Board of Trustees requested assistance from Delaware County Engineers Office in evaluating the need for no engine brake signs on State Route 605 before the roundabout at Fancher, and whereas Delaware County Engineers Office have deemed the installation of no engine brake signs would be appropriate in these areas. Therefore be resolved, the Harlem Township Township, Delaware County authorizes the Township Administrative Assistant to proceed in the purchase of and installation of no engine brake signs in the area of 605 before the roundabout. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes,
Any discussion there on the Center Village?
this only deals with this. We'd have to do another resolution. So there's another one in the works. They'll have to be presented. This gets at least the main one. So was there a second?
I seconded.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Jackson.
Aye.
Holiday.
Aye.
Trainer.
Aye.
Okay. Please. Fill in that other. Everything else for us?
That's it for me. Thank you. All right.
Thanks for your
I think,
patience tonight.
Jason's been communicating with you on the Lewis Road thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna take care of it.
Well, I'm gonna,
Are you sending both of those?
yeah, I'm making copies right now for him.
Okay. So no.
I was just gonna forward it to you.
Yeah, just email it to me just in case.
Okay.
I'll put it in
I know I need, sorry.
Find a file and stick it in.
Aaron, are you waiting for us? To yes, so we should deal with this. Okay.
I got nowhere else to be.
Whatever.
Yes, you probably
Or how you
do.
want it. Okay.
We probably should take up trouble again so that
Okay.
Aaron doesn't.
Yeah,
have to-
Aaron, the what you're proposing 3-year and the beginning rate is what? Do we know that?
We not to exceed 0.09499. So the goal would be to get below that price. Mhm.
We're talking 3-year.
Correct, and that would be for that first year.
Okay.
Then that commodity price following that would be not to exceed 0.0700.
Do you understand how that works?
More or less, right? I mean, we're trying to combat a supply and demand issue on the electricity side, and locking in these rates right now essentially will save money moving in the future for the next 3 years.
That's correct. Yes. Against the utility price, against the electric utility price of AP Ohio.
Again, specifically against the volatility of such, correct? Yeah. No, I mean,
There really isn't an alternative, is there?
There is always a choice. You can not continue with the program. People go back to the utility, you know that they will pay more.
This
That's-
is in the best interest of our residents. Is
Correct.
it not?
This is in the best interest. But if you want to know alternatives and other decisions, there's nothing saying that you have to have an aggregation program in place. But it is in the best interest of your residents and the commercial businesses that participate as well to ensure that they have savings. And
Worked
people
out
are
fairly
still
well.
always free to look for their own program, right? This is just a default program that's in place for people who might not know enough or have the desire to go look for their own program independently.
I don't see any issue with it. We just don't have the resolution on the agenda.
No, when could the resolution be prepared? Our
Well-
next meeting is the 21st of May.
Of May, okay. For other communities, we have asked for a motion to approve pending legal. So if you sent your prosecutor, they approve, then by where you're approving. So it doesn't have to wait until the next meeting.
Comfortable doing that?
Yeah, and I'm
Uh,
going, go ahead.
Maybe designate me signer. So like, he gets the copy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we just would add the resolution onto the end of the number sequence, since we did have it on the agenda to discuss this.
It would be 14.
Yeah,
There is also, just, I apologize to interrupt.
you're fine.
There's also the natural gas program that we did not discuss while I was up here. It's much, much more straightforward. You're currently at a percentage discount to the utility adder. We're proposing that that continue. Same duration of time for 3 years. If we see a good spot in the market, we can always convert it to a fixed price. But we know that for sure there will be savings against the utility. That's what you have right now. Simply suggesting to extend that exact same program.
Those being separate programs,
Correct. Electric and natural gas are separate.
they would need separate resolutions.
Correct.
And so, I mean, I think, you know, like I said, I don't see any issue of us just add numerical sequence on the
I think it'd be
resolutions.
good. No, it'd be fine.
Okay. I'll take a stab at it.
14.
14 and 15. So I would move to approve resolution 250416T-014 to approve the Harlan Township Aggregation Program update and renewal for electric pending legal approval by the Delaware County Prosecutor's Office. And I would designate Dave Jackson, chairman, as signer. Is there a second?
Second.
And then vote on that. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep.
Nay. Motion carries. Let's do that again.
15 gonna be the gas.
Resolution -015. Same language, approve Harlan Township Aggregation Program update renewal for natural gas pending legal approval through the Delaware County Prosecutor's Office, designating Dave Jackson, chairman, as signer. All those agree?
Agree.
Aye.
Aye.
I guess we didn't call for a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
Aye. Motion carries. What time is it? Jeez.
That time.
No, fuck the one.
All right, so I think that justifies or satiates the need for
All
that.
right. So we're good there.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate
Thank you for
Thank you
hanging
for
in
your
there.
time.
Lisa, financials.
Sure, the March bank reconcile sitting up there ready for signature with the checks, the appropriation status. Ledger and cash summary report was emailed to you guys and they're online for viewing. Approval of the warrants and vouchers according to the payment listing report up there, starting with warrant number 13895 through warrant number 13909, voucher 107-2025 through voucher 114-2025. Total amount $101,071.31.
Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Motion carried.
So compensation for trustee John Trainer.
I-
Approved
Can I explain this just
Sure.
quickly? Because I'm on permanent disability, I can only earn so much income per year. I have been serving in an online master's degree program as a prof for a minimal amount, and the township demands time. And so I've decided to stop that job where I was getting minimal compensation and ask the township then to pay me what I can actually earn without the Social Security Administration coming after me, which is $1,550 per month. And so I am asking the township to consider remunerating me $1,550 per month, beginning in May, and I'll stop the other job. At this point, I have received no compensation from the township, which has been fine. But I got to find some work-life balance here. So,
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Motion to approve resolution -005.
I'll second it. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried.
abstain.
supplemental appropriation. Now to move the following appropriation for purpose of trustee compensation. Move from 1,000-130-190-0000 minus 12,000. Move it to 1,000-110-190-000 12,000.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
The Harlem Township audit for the years 23 through 24 was started on April the 11th, this past Friday. And may be completed by this coming Friday. It'll take about, up to a month to receive the full audit. Once I receive the completed audit, it will be made available online for residents to review.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Want to hit these?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have some items in because of the time tonight, I'm perfectly happy moving this discussion to next month, but things that we should consider. I believe that Harlem Township should consider purchasing key property in the township for future growth. This is something that townships do to secure, for example, park space. And if we think about the future Harlem Township park system, it's possible for the township to get grants to do this. Genoa Township just purchased 42 acres with a grant that was around $1 million. And we need to be thinking like this as we strategically plan for the future of the township. Secondly, I did meet with Big Walnut School Superintendent and Treasurer on Monday. Big Walnut, in perfect timing with what we're doing, is beginning a strategic planning process to look at their building needs into the future. Currently, their high school, for example, has 1,350 students. They have a capacity of 1,850, so there's room to grow. That's important for us to think about. It's important for them to think about as they look at the growth in Harlem Township. If we were to build on to Sauder or to build a new elementary school, we would be asking the developer to consider donating 20 acres of land to Big Walnut Schools in order to make that happen. And that conversation could be very dynamic and include many other factors, et cetera. But what's important is that we've begun this conversation with Big Walnut Schools and asked them to partner with us in strategic planning. And so their treasurer will be joining our economic development team when Dana gets it started in May, so that we get the school's perspective on this entire planning process, which we feel is very important because we've heard from developers like Joe, et cetera, that they're a key partner in our strategic planning and effort going forward. So we wanted to let you know that we're launched into that relationship. Adam had actually already begun that, I think, when we were having TIF conversations, and we're just continuing down that pathway. 3, all employees must complete all fraud training and submit their certificate of completion to Lisa Hersey by April 23rd, 2025. I don't know how to emphasize this more. We've said it several times. This is particularly members of the Board of Zoning Appeals need to get this done. I would suggest to them that at their next BZA meeting, they take the first 8 minutes of the meeting and watch the video and sign a sign-up sheet. Okay? Let's just knock that out. I think there's also at least one person who needs to submit their pay paperwork. Is that correct? Is that Keith? Keith Campbell. Keith, who is, I think, online. You need to submit your pay paperwork to Lisa. I have received, this is number 4, job descriptions from 2 township administrators in both Genoa Township and in Prairie Township and Columbus. I'm not going to go into the details of that this evening. We can do that in May. Just suffice it to say, That's an ongoing effort for us to explore this possibility for the township. There's not a burning need to hire this person in the next couple of months. I think we've got time, but the homework is being done. Number 5, and this is my last one, I believe that it's vital for the trustees to consider adding additional meetings, sorry guys, to our agenda that are focused on strategic planning. That is, that we can just sit down and dialogue about what we just spent 2 hours doing tonight and not burn up our meetings. So for example, I would suggest that on April the 30th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, we have a meeting to discuss the prioritization of these strategic pillars that we get back from our residents, that we just put those in their order and deal with any other topics that we might want to deal with.
Yeah,
as a
I agree
team.
that we need to take some load off the regular meeting.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so this would be April 30th at 7 p.m.
Okay.
Trustees meeting around the topic of strategic planning. Are you good with that, Adam?
I am.
Okay. I'm done.
Done. All right, getting back on the agenda, next item I have is to approve the signing of the Consumers Gas, request to work on Harlem Estates. They're wanting to put a line under the road to serve residents. So I'll make a motion, we approve the request. Have a
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
We will do that later. Establish account with the Delaware Foundation.
Yes, we had Chris Baker come in and talk to us last month about this. And so I think the next step in this process is to establish that account in the name of Harlem Township to enable residents.
My takeaway on his presentation is, could somebody designate funds for a specific thing? I came away from it like it didn't sound like that.
I think that what would be required is underneath or in addition to that broad general account, we would say, here's an account for parks, for example. And then create other specific kinds of accounts.
I think there has to be other slots that the money could go in, where it's parks or somebody wants to do something for the township administration building, that type of thing, cemetery.
Yeah.
If we can do that, I'd be good with it. But
so this is too broad at this point. For
yeah,
you. Okay.
For me, yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's good.
No, I'd like to narrow it, zero in on it, okay?
And so it might be that I come back and say, we need to establish 3 accounts. 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
Okay.
something, yeah,
Perfect.
okay, thank you.
Would those 3 accounts each be charged or is?
They would be. It would be
Yeah, that's,
that same fee, minimum 250 a year.
I'm
Yeah.
not for that. I think, maybe we need to talk to them and Corey. Maybe we can have something on our website to direct people to earmark it something as they put money in the foundation.
I hear what you're saying. Let me talk to Chris about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's gotta be a way. I mean, we had people wanting to do the recycle bins at the park a year or 2 ago. And there was something else too. I don't remember what it was.
Okay.
Okay. What do we got here? Approval of posting, public posting. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Got lost in the weeds. Since House Bill 315 has passed, like I said earlier when I was doing the hearings, the township no longer will place notices in the Delaware Gazette. With the passing of Bill 315, Harlem Township shall post public notices on the township website, township Facebook, at the township administration building, at the public entrance in the case, and on the sign in the front of the firehouse administration. The date and time of the posting shall be included in the bottom left corner of the public notice. Said posting shall be photographed and placed in a file with public postings, and 1 copy with the minutes of the appropriate board that the notice appears for. So it's not in conflict with the higher revised code will prevail. In other words, if the higher revised code passes, changes, so will our notice. And what I mean by board is the trustees have public notices, zoning commission has public notices, the Board of Appeals has public notices. So each one of their request hearings, whatever it is, that notice, a copy of it will go in that folder to match up with an audit. So that's my motion. It's resolution 250416T 010. Do I have a second?
Lisa has
I've got a
comment.
couple questions about that.
Yeah.
So we're not, so it said, suggested that we do one employee do the postings.
Yeah,
That way there isn't all kinds of people trying to post and they forget to give us
yeah,
the posting, cause I need those for the audits. They need to be time stamped and I already talked to Ashley.
I'm the
okay,
only one that doesn't.
Perfect.
yeah, you'll be the one
Nobody
does
else
it.
is trying to take that position.
Yeah, because,
Nobody else wants to answer those postings.
well,
You hurry on. Take it.
okay.
Did it say,
I just needed a little
We ran that
clarification.
by Corey
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, I just needed some
Okay.
clarification.
Okay, fine.
does that need to be part of the resolution or we're good?
No, Ashley and I already discussed it and she explained how she's gonna do it and I'm fine with it. She's gonna zip it straight over to me via email. So we're
Okay, very good. So was there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote on this, please.
Paxton.
Aye.
Holiday.
Aye.
Tran.
Aye.
Okay. Big break thing. We will revisit the Center Village issue. When we passed the resolution for the Jake break 3-4 months ago, we thought we were done with it. We had both locations, and this just popped up on the radar like the first of the week. That we had to do a Pacific one, and the wording actually came from, was it Liberty Township, Ashley? Okay, so we'll address the Center Village one. I'll get with Doug on that. Approval of trustee minutes. Was there any additions or corrections to minutes? Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Fire department.
Fire department yields.
Jet lag, huh?
What about the Grange Hall?
Oh, I missed that one. Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
We have a resolution to reimburse for renovations at the Grange Hall. It's resolution 250416T 012. It's to approve the reimbursing of funds to the Grange Hall by the Harlem Township Heritage at a cost of $1,125.96 for shelving and painting for the Grange Hall pantry.
So may I comment on this?
Yes, sir.
So, this reimbursement is going to be made, but the process for getting this reimbursement is not the right process. When funds need to be expended, they should be included as part of the budget process. And then not just go out and spend money willy-nilly and ask the trustees to reimburse those funds. So for example, with this, I think that we could have actually asked our own maintenance folks to paint this room, and it would have cost us far less than we're about to reimburse.
Yeah.
And so the message to our folks is plan a little bit better, I think. And as you, so why was a receipt submitted?
Well, because one of you mentioned that you thought it would be reimbursed, which is why we submitted the receipt.
So you didn't expect to be paid back.
That's for any work we've done up there.
So here's what I would suggest, Joni, that in the future, when we come around to budgeting for 26, that you do submit a budget and you have it. Here's what we plan on doing in this coming calendar year, so that we as trustees can approve that, so that you should not have to personally be encumbered with the cost of this work. So we're happy to reimburse it. We just want the right process to be followed.
Well, do we want actually, I think Heritage should give us a list, estimates or list of improvements they might need. And we could build that into our building maintenance fund or something like that for that facility. I'd rather do it that way.
Absolutely.
And I think they need to visit Jason.
Yeah.
When they want to do things,
Mhm.
maybe Jason
He may be
can
able
get
to
a
do
better
it.
deal. Or
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, right.
Roger?
But Heritage put in several $1,000s in that building, never asked trustees to reimburse what we put in. Now, when that material first came available, trustees did put in $1,000 or some sort of money. But the Heritage Group has invested a lot of money in that building because we felt like we'd give back for what we're using it for.
Copy.
You know, because we have it tied up for a week well, 3 or 4 times a year. You know, we used to tie it up and make our own noodles and all. And that's what we started doing, you know, when we got a little bit of conversation, Delaware County Health Department. We upgraded to where they got off our backs. And we just donated that because we thought it was only fair because we used the building.
Copy. Which it's incredibly gracious.
Sorry, John, but that's where we was on this shelving unit.
Yes.
And the shelving was just materials, it wasn't for any labor.
Okay. It's incredibly gracious. And I think that we're happy to reimburse it.
Take it.
But that if we could work together as we go into 26 to facilitate these things so that things don't surprise us. That's all.
That's good to know. That's good to know for us.
Yeah.
That's good to know for us.
All right.
So I'll second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now back to I guess Jason gave us a little list on maintenance. He's addressing the flooding on Green Cook near house number 441. Possible tile replacement in the ditch to allow water flow. He's gonna be renting a camera to investigate. Pavement repairs on Lewis Road, 4 feet wide but 4 inches depth. Removal and placement of 4-inch asphalt. Total footage to be determined. Meeting with Delaware County engineer on site with contractor before work starts. He's also investigating some flooding on the Lewis Road area at the first curve east of Green Cook. We'll use the camera on the road there. Because there's a tile that goes underneath there. I believe it's 6-inch. We'll be investigating catch basin inlet and the perceived ditch enclosure on Gorsuch at Harlem Road. Inlet on the north side of Gorsuch, just east of Harlem Road by the stop sign. Excuse me. Moving forward with the restroom renovation, the plumber has reached out to Delaware County for a permit and is waiting on a reply. COVID has began the demolition of the concrete silo. First mowing the park is completed this week. Had 2 burials since last meeting, 1 full and 1 urn. All will be mowed this week. Has met with the AEP tree removal contractor, be removing a large dying pine tree next to the entrance drive and by the Grange Hall and trimming the large maples along the east driveway as needed for power line clearance. And one other thing, Jason shared with me, he's going to be looking into a permit fee for like consumers gas, working the right of way from like consumers, Delco and any other utility. Also maybe a permit for concrete driveways or paved driveways. And the reason for that on township roads, if they encroach into the berm area, it's a problem with the concrete or asphalt. We've had a couple things like that, so.
So working on that, we're hoping to have that to you guys for the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Okay. So that's all he has. Mike, you're up.
All right. Right now, we're at the 25 permits for the year, which actually is more than last year. We're currently tracking 10 code violations. We currently have 4 violations of business operating residential area. The commercial poured wall business is, the owner had 2 preliminary meetings with the zoning commission on a possible PCD plan, but they've not filed an application yet. I think they're doing that toward the end of this month, are they not, Ash? The commercial poured wall, Caposia,
Posia, their first preliminaries in July.
of July.
Second.
Second, yes, sorry, their second is in July.
The first one for the other group.
Yes, first one is in June.
Yeah.
For the other group.
And the commercial dump truck on Center Village Road, that owner withdrew his application for PCDA and it's PCD and it's set up now. He's working with Clace on Plan for Land. I wanted to bounce this off you guys though, after talking with residents. I talked to Corey about sending a cease and desist letter to him since it's been going on for 2 years and it's continuing to get stretched out. And it's going to be probably by the end of September, October before they hear it. Smack him upside the head.
No.
Hey, there's a meeting going on. Sorry.
So I wanted, he said to get you guys permission to do that. I mean, whether, if nothing happens from it, which I doubt anything will happen, it's gonna go to Corey and Corey is gonna have to take him to court. He said, by the time it gets there, we may beat it. By the time they get through it, they may not. But at least we're doing something for the residents, because I mean, it was really bad last time. If you guys remember them being in here, they were up in arms.
So are you looking for affirmation? That
I'm
you-
looking for you guys to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys
Go
were all
for it.
bobbing your
Yeah.
heads. I took that as affirmation. The one landscaping business was approved for its home occupation. They're fine. They're operating within their guidelines. We got a commercial business that's still moving his stuff to New Albany, but he's not operating out of his building anymore. We have 6 other nuisance violations that are currently in phases of cleanup. We have 1 unowned property on Harlem Road, which we can't take any additional action on. The Hatch Road property that just received notification from the Delaware County Health District with the following order that they need to clean up their property and give documentation to the health department for the disposal by April 28th of 2025. Now, that could ultimately come back and fall in our lap to do something with it, but we'll see what happens with that. She seems to think they might have a different owner there. Working on a variance issue about a variance violation, and Corey also told me to check with you guys to make sure if this violation continues, it's going to go to him, but it's ultimately going to be, it could come back to where you guys got to approve me taking his variance away from him. Corey wanted me to run that for you guys, so just keep that on the back burner. The storage facility on Fancher Road, that minor change was finally approved. The Board of Zoning Appeals is working on a variance for the sign in Westerville Estates. They're going to be in this week, and he's also going to be working on a variance for a minor change in a PRD on Gorsuch Road. And just, I think I've talked to 2 of you, but I want to bounce it off and let everybody here, I guess, know. We have a natural gas filtering and regulating terminal planned for Fancher Road. I was on a Zoom meeting with them this week. The company named Willpower stated they're planning to be at the power sighting board by fall of this year for this filtering and regulating, and it's going to feed businesses at the southwest corner, probably just about anywhere, but they're going to start down there on the southeast corner of the township, and they'll be filtering and regulating the natural gas to go to buildings. I asked them if it was possibly something that could be that would support a electric plant or something like that, and they said we sure could. So just so you know that that's going on in the southern part of the township. And then we just had a minor meeting with developers for a property over on Harlem Road, north of Center Village, 30-acre property that's still talking about going in and possibly doing PRV. That is it.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, any other business? Yes, Joni.
Harlem Township Heritage would like the trustees to approve us putting banners on the fence around the old cement plant for the farmer's market and food truck on Wednesdays again, like we did last year?
You fine?
Sure.
Approved.
Yep.
Thank you. We'll be starting them on May 21st, I believe.
Okay. Anything else?
Sorry.
I just have a question.
Mike?
My question relates back to discussion regarding sub-trunk sewer.
Yeah.
And the upcoming engineering contract that's gonna be awarded. Who from the township is really representing the township? We heard from Joe Ciminelli.
Yeah.
Is he our representative? He's a
No,
developer.
he's a developer.
So who is the person that is going to be speaking for the township? Is it going to be a consultant? Is it going to be one of you? Who's going to be doing that?
Well, I have in the past. John has had conversations with Tiffany also, so I guess,
We're a team.
yeah.
I think it's important, Mike, to communicate to you that it's a team effort. That we would move forward, I think, in conversation with Pete Griggs as well. When we come to the point of signing on a dotted line, if that's required. So if I say the trustees represent the township, kind of depending upon availability and, to get to a meeting, et cetera. I think with the meeting that she's envisioning, it would involve all three of us. It would be a public meeting in the next step.
Okay, that's part of what I was asking, yes.
Yeah. Is that your
And
sense,
it's-
Adam?
It would have to be.
Yeah.
No
Yes, the
fiscal
three of you.
decision of the township can be
No.
made without
Be
the
all
board.
three of us.
Yeah, it's gotta be,
Has meeting date been set?
No.
Has it been
no,
scheduled at this point?
no, they're,
Then, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood. I thought that they were looking to move forward to letting the contract within the next couple of weeks.
Joe, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think the contract that they're letting is just to hire the consultant,
yes.
is to just initiate, to get the consultant on board to start a design and look at alternatives.
So they will be looking at alternatives. We're not looking at a consultant that's already starting to work on a plan.
Right.
No.
Right.
That wasn't clear. Thank you.
Yes. May I ask, Joni, when we were talking about the folks that volunteer on voting days and the need to provide meals for those folks. And the township has an opportunity to be benevolent in this regard.
Done it in the past.
Understood.
And there's no obligation.
Understood. This is a totally proactive, hey, this would be great to say thank you to the people volunteering at our voting polls. How many people are we talking about between the church and the Grange?
I expect this one will be fairly small because there's not a lot on the ballot this time.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 or 9 people. I've never been at the church. Do they have about the same as the number here?
Number of voters yet, or the
Number of pollers.
people voters, yeah, so I'm sorry. 10.
Okay.
Yeah, usually it's.
You have 10 to 12, something.
So what we'll do on this April 30th meeting is perhaps I'll posit a resolution to provide to serve the folks who are volunteering by providing a lunch from the township. These guys can think about that. And if you want to provide me any more direction in that regard, I certainly can. I would accept it, but I think that's important. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Anything further?
Phone systems are only 2 to 4 weeks out, just so you know.
Excuse me?
Phone systems, I'm being extra pushy with that. 4 weeks out.
How you getting along? Nothing?
But
About as good as my new laptop, probably.
There it is.
Nice.
How's that?
There's a lot of, hey, do you know about this? They're talking to me like I'm some tech guru, and I'm like, I'm just answering this number right here. So stop sending me these crazy emails. So no,
Oh, and Ashley had a request from a lady wanting to park a car across the street for sale sign.
Is that red maroon car? Cause it's been all over the town.
I don't know. Don't have any idea.
that one.
I've seen it.
We had her move it.
I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah, they had it in the driveway of the concrete plant. Jason got it out of there, so.
But then they had it on the corner at Miller or at 605 and Gorsuch.
Yep.
And then I saw it was moved again.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business, I would move that we
I would
conclude
accept
the
that.
meeting at
I'll second
9:54
that.
and 29 seconds PM. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we got some book work there to do.
Question real quick about this.